Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Savvy Cast. This is Jamie, and I'm so grateful to all of you who are joining, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. Okay, Mother's Day is a few days away, and my podcast producer suggested that this episode be one with my daughters to talk about their experience and perception of how I did as a mother. I really did not want to do this because I know that if they're honest, there are many things that I did wrong, but I told them, I said, girls, I want y'all to jump on, share what I did right, what I did wrong. And they are here with me today. Everyone is in their home. I'm going to introduce them. And girls, first of all, thank you for taking time out of your Saturday morning to be on Mom's podcast.
Oh, we love it.
Thanks for having us.
Okay. Well, girls, first I'm just going to introduce you all. Then we're going to do our icebreaker question. Then we're going to dive right in. At the bottom right corner is my firstborn, Ellie. She's firstborn by 1 minute. Judd is my secondborn. They're twins. She was born 2 minutes later. And then the baby is in the bottom left corner. Emma, she's joining us from Auburn. So the twins and I are in Birmingham. Emma is in Auburn. Girls, your dad wrote a description, just short description of the three of you, but I'm going to read it after we do our last meal. So Ellie, typically in your typical firstborn fashion, you asked if you could start and go first and answer every question first. So we're going to start with you.
I'm definitely the
order. There's always got to be order with a firstborn.
Yes, I'm the most introverted of the two, so got to get my words in first. But
okay, so Ellie, and Ellie, first of all, before you answer, I want y'all to tell basically what you do and then what your last meal.
Yes, so I own a nutrition company called Vulcan Nutrition. I've been on the Savvy Cast before. So I work as a nutritionist there. And then I'm also a registered nurse part-time in pediatric anesthesia. My last meal, my husband asked me this the other day, and I said something that I didn't think I would say, but it would be my mom's Brunswick stew. Oh. Would be my last meal. It's on her website, but it's just such a comfort food and I never crave it. But if I had a last meal, it would be that.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
Mom's Brunswick stew is so good.
Judd is the middle child. So Judd, tell us what you do and then your last meal.
So I work in surgery at UAB Hospital here in Birmingham at the main campus. And so I scrub and circulate, specifically on the general surgery team, but we end up getting to do a little bit of everything. And my last meal would be, Mom, it would be your Kensington Club Steakhouse Copycat filet mignon with your twice baked potatoes, a killer Greek salad, and some of those Edgar's Butterflake rolls. That would be my last meal all day, every day.
That sounds wonderful.
Well, that's my Thanksgiving meal every year, and I just savor it because it's just my favorite meal ever.
Oh, that's so good. Okay. And then the baby, Emma, number 3. And Emma is 4.5 years younger than the twins, just FYI. So Emma, what's your jam right now? And then what's your last meal?
So I'm in Auburn right now. I am a junior and studying marketing. I love it so much. It's amazing, but I'm not sure what I want to do post-grad. So still figuring that out. But my last meal, I'm torn between mom's lamb, or the spaghetti, because your spaghetti is the best thing in the world. So I think
so good.
I would choose spaghetti and Greek salad though, if I had to narrow it down, just because it's unmatched from anything I've ever had.
Oh, y'all are so sweet. Y'all didn't have to choose mom's cooking.
No, I know, but it's the best.
It is.
Okay. So guys, for our followers, I want to read, I had your dad write a very short description of each of you so that those watching and listening can sort of get a feel for your personality in light of how you maybe experienced your childhood. And I'm first going to start, and I will say what I am, and then I'm going to have you all do the short description of me. I'm an Enneagram 8. As an 8, maybe I was harsher than, maybe not as nurturing as I should have been, or that some parents are. But that's sort of a little description of me. And then I'm going to let you all describe me in your terms. But first, I'm going to start with Ellie, and I'm going to describe you in a few adjectives. Your typical firstborn, driven, goal-oriented, deep rivers, and independent. I totally agree with Dad on that. And Judd, even though you are a twin, all studies pretty much point to, if you're the second born, even of a twin, you're a middle child.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I fit all the stereotypes.
Yeah. And your descriptions are, and you are an Enneagram. Okay. And Ellie, you are an Enneagram 3.
Yes.
Okay. Judd, you are an Enneagram 2, which is the helper. 3 is the performer. Correct, Ellie? 2 is the helper. Joyful, peacemaker, deceptively competitive,
Yes.
wants everyone to be happy, mother to all, classic Enneagram 2. I agree with that. And Emma, the baby, is an Enneagram 4, the unicorn.
Ooh.
Is there another word for the 4 besides unicorn?
Individualist.
Individualist. Okay.
Or the romantic. It can.
Okay. Yeah. Those all sort of intertwine. Drinks deeply from her relationships. Y'all, Dad's terminology. Spookingly discerning. Spookingly discerning. Fun loving. Direct. Candid. Y'all, Dad is.
That's spot on.
That is good.
Spookingly direct. Okay. No, spookingly discerning. Okay. So guys, each of you take a turn and just a few adjectives describe mom. And we're going to have Dad on to do a part 2 before Father's Day. So you'll get to do Dad as well.
Yeah. So the 3 words that come to mind when I think of mom, the first one is honest in the best way. And I'm not going to preface all of these, but when there were few people in my life that would tell it to me like it is, I knew my mom would. But she had a way of doing it lovingly, but very unfiltered, which is what I needed. So honest. The second word that comes to mind is advocate, an advocate for other people more than herself. She's definitely an advocate for herself, but more so an advocate for the people that aren't going to speak up for themselves. And then the third is hospitable. And I tried to think of another adjective because I know that one, I specifically want to tailor it towards using her home to bring people together. So those are the 3 that came to mind.
Awesome. Okay. Middle child, number 2, Judd.
And this is hilarious. I wrote these down because you told us we needed to be prepared with our last meal and 3 adjectives to describe you. And Ellie, we have not even talked. You can attest to that. My first one I wrote was honest, like brutally honest to a fault. And someone like me who Enneagram 2 can be a little more sensitive. You know, we had to work through that hump a little bit, Mom, but now I understand you. You're great. And we really always have been, but it would come across a little harsh to me sometimes. I wrote hospitable too, Ellie, that exact word. Mom, our home has always been a place where you've never flinched when we've brought 30 people over from, you know, the CrossFit gym, or, you know, when we would tell you last minute that our high school friends are coming over, you would always whip up something and use food and fellowship to bring people together for an amazing time. And then I also wrote, this isn't one word because I couldn't think of one word to describe this phrase, but you are always trying to grow and better yourself. You've never been stagnant. You're always motivated to be getting better in any area of your life, which I really, really respect.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay. Now the baby, Emma.
And I would agree with all of those, spot on. But mine were all different. My first one was, I said, you're very yourself in every situation. You're not fake. I think it's easy when you are like a social media influencer, or do have a big presence on certain platforms, to put out an image that you're not. And literally you are exactly who you are online. It's the same person you are behind the camera. So I respect that a lot, just because I don't see that often in a lot of other people. And then I would say you're one of the most driven people I know. Never was I worried after school that I wasn't going to have a meal, that the house was going to be a wreck. Like, you always provided for us. You always made sure we were taken care of, and you do your own thing. Kind of going along with my third adjective, you're so independent. And I think watching you like not be a codependent on Dad, or like a wife that just kind of sits around all day and goes and does random little things, like you have a job, you have things that excite you and motivate you outside of dad and us. And I think it's awesome because you're a hard worker, and that's why dad respects you so much, and us too.
Yes.
You're a strong woman, and you've taught us to be strong and, not weak. So.
Yeah.
Well, and I will say, being what I am now, for lack of a better term, influencer or blogger or whatever, when y'all were little, I stayed at home. I was blessed to be able to stay at home, and it's fine if you work outside the home and in, but I did stay at home. And then I didn't start this until later in life. So Emma, your experience, I probably was always in this realm most of your life, whereas the girls, it was more of the traditional stay at home, dad worked and so forth. But I just want to dive in because I do have a lot of parents or a lot of messages for followers who say, tell us about parenting. What are your best resources, your best advice? And guys, I feel woefully inadequate because there were so many things that I did wrong. So, and y'all are of a different generation, as y'all can obviously see. The culture around us today is unlike anything we've ever seen. And I've never seen it in my 54 years, things that are happening in schools and in homes. And I feel like we were very blessed to be in a type of a bubble that life was more normal. The world around us had common sense. We weren't having to face some of these issues that are literally, in my opinion, crazy.
And also, you didn't have social media. That was a huge factor. And
We did with Emma. We did with
True.
Emma. Well, when did it start, guys? I can't even remember. With Emma.
We had eye touches. We didn't get a phone until we were 16, but we had eye touches, which had Wi-Fi, and Instagram came around. Like, I feel like when we were in junior high, because I remember
That's right.
Tragic pictures, but yeah,
but it was different. It was different.
It was different. Instagram wasn't a big deal. It was not. Facebook was kind of the thing.
And if you posted something, it would be the most raw, real. There were no filters or editing.
Oh, yeah, it was like pixelated times.
So y'all basically grew up in a not really big social media world. Yeah. Emma, you came up long later, and it was present. But did you feel like social media had a big impact on how you were parented differently, or the issues that maybe arose? And I do think of some are popping into my head.
Honestly, not really. I think the first time I started being aware of like the tragedy of some of the stuff I was seeing and like being exposed to was until college. I wouldn't say high school I ever struggled with like a lot of the stuff that I started struggling with in college due to just social media and like body standards and stuff like that.
Okay. So posting for you all was like posting graduation or posting a trip to the beach, and Emma, there would be an occasional Emma, don't like that swimsuit.
Emma, I accidentally posted like an immodest low shirt, but it was nothing bad, but like, yeah.
Okay. So what I would like for y'all to do is just maybe start with Ellie. And I want everything, and I want my listeners and viewers to know, I want this to be helpful to you all. This is not about, let's talk about family savvy. I want this to be for others to sort of get a glimpse from three perspectives from one family's experience. So I want this to be beneficial. Also,
one thing to point out, since Judd, Emma, and I are so different, there's going to be things that you did that I really appreciated that Judd and Emma maybe were like, whoa, you were too honest. Whereas I'm like, thank goodness she was honest.
Right.
So anyway, I just think it's important that there's context, but
yes.
So the first thing that comes to mind, and one thing that I'm so grateful that you did as a mom, is something that is paying dividends today. But when I think of my childhood, the first two words that come to mind are consistent and mature. Not me, but the way that y'all raised us. I cannot think of a night that I did not come home and have a meal at our table together. And that might sound simple, but when I remember when I was 5 or 6, Judd and I at 5 or 6 years old were having conversations with 50-year-old, 40-year-old people that you had invited over.
Mhm.
It wasn't, oh, y'all go sit at the kids' table or y'all go up and eat in your room. It was, no, you're going to sit here and have a mature conversation with people that are a lot wiser than you, because all you're around is a bunch of little fools all day, you know? And I remember I have such a desire to be around people that are older and wiser than me because of that. And I remember so many times sitting around having conversations with older people that 13-year-old kids are not interested in, but I had an interest in because y'all kind of made us have an interest in it and said, no, this is important. And so that to me is so valuable in a way that I want to raise my kids is, oh no, they're going to have that consistent structure of knowing, okay, we're going to come home. And even if it is picking up Chick-fil-A to have around the table, you know, we're going to do that because kids want that consistency and structure, no matter how much they might act like they don't.
Yeah.
So that was very, very important to me. And then the last thing I'll say on that is another thing that you did really, really well. You are a reader and a learner. And every single night I would come in to kiss you before bed. You'd have your glasses on, your cuddle duds, and you would have a book in your hands. And to me, going off the social media topic, like that, I noticed that you never really said much about it, but you were always reading a book. And it made me want to be like you. If for those that don't know, Mom, her background is in English. She was an English teacher. And I just have this desire to be a reader because you were always reading, always learning, and talking about how important it is to understand language and read. So, and ask questions. A curiosity, I think, is something else that you gave us. So
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you, Ellie. Number 2, Judd, middle child.
Ellie, that was deep. That was really well said. I mean, when you asked that question, I know this is way more simple than Ellie's answer, but I would truly say my childhood, and I'm not trying to over dramatize it, I would say it was sort of magical. I mean, I always felt loved. All my needs were, met, obviously by God's grace, because he provided that to me through y'all. But I had Ellie as my twin sister and best friend, and, Emma came along later. We had John David and LCV across the street. It was just simple. And it was, almost in my mind, perfect, to say the least. I'm not trying to make it sound perfect, but it was really, I just have wonderful, wonderful memories. So I know that's kind of probably cliche to say, but bouncing off what Ellie said and everything that she said was true. She's more of a deep thinker than me, but mine was just wonderful.
And let me say, because I know people might be asking, thank you for that, Judd. You all went to school. You went to Briarwood Christian School, which is a Christian school, but it's got lots of different people. Even though it is a Christian-based school, that you have lots of people of different walks of life. Not everyone's it's evangelical, not covenant. You had great friends, other great parents who poured into you. Y'all were all involved in sports. So that's just sort of the picture of how y'all were raised. So Emma, baby, number 3.
I would say the same thing kind of as Judd and Ellie. Like when I was writing this down, all I could think of was like, just honestly, a blissful childhood. I think days spent outside, lots of family time. You and Dad and Judd and Ellie always made sure that like we were doing things that actually were beneficial to us rather than sitting around. We never watched TV. We weren't on iPads. We weren't in this like culture of kind of like families going out to eat and on their phones and on their iPads. Like we actually spent time together, played outside. And I just think like my childhood was just innocent. Like you said, high school and like junior high and middle school, I think best friends in my life. I had an amazing experience that did come with hardships as well. Like, of course, I think once I started getting into middle school, things kind of changed. But as for my childhood, I think I have no complaints.
And Mom, can I add one thing I just thought of? I think something that was so important when Emma and Ellie both said structured. I mean, church was literally not an option on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights. I mean, that was something we did as a family, youth group and small group, even Sunday nights when we'd go to Broward youth group. Like that was something y'all had so ingrained in our routine that even like today, I feel like I lose a little bit, like going to midweek church. I think that was just so important in our biblical foundation which obviously I believe it starts in the home, but y'all would always make sure we were very involved and planted in the church as a family. I will say, I think we had such good friends because you and dad, in a sense, chose our friends from a young age. And to this day, those are the people that we still do life with. And y'all, in a sense, co-parented almost with all of our friends' parents, because y'all, in a sense, had most of just the same values. And I think that was really important in our upbringing. And it kind of gave us that safe space, honestly, growing up, because we did do life with a lot of very like-minded people and weren't exposed to a lot of things that y'all, weren't in control of or filtering.
Right. Did Emma or Ellie, did y'all feel like friends were ever an issue? I feel like we always had great friends whose parents, other than small decisions like when you get a phone maybe or small things like that. Well, that's not really small, but we were pretty aligned on the big issues. Do y'all feel the same as Judd, that with friends and parents of friends, that it was a pretty good situation for y'all?
Oh, for sure.
For sure. It was cool though. I talk to people about how y'all parented all the time, so this is all fresh in my memory, but it was cool because y'all were not dictators in the sense of if we had a friend that was kind of questionable, you didn't say you can't be friends with them. You didn't cut them out, but you were so honest with us about what you maybe saw that was a red flag. And yeah, you can still be friends with them, still love them, but this brings a lot of other things to mind. But y'all were the place that I learned about everything first, and not to get on the topic of like sex and all of that, but like y'all were just so open with us about things that most kids learn from other kids, and that's where a lot of stuff goes awry. But yeah, just like if we had a friend that was kind of wild or like super flirty, you would just talk about it. And it was just, I don't know, y'all were the safe place. Like I never felt like there was anything I couldn't tell y'all or go to y'all about. And man, what an awesome way to raise your kids. That's probably why Emma is as honest as she is. There's not a thing that Emma hides from any of us, it's just because y'all are just such a safe place, and we learned everything from y'all first. I don't know. That was kind of a tangent, but I think that was
no, that's very good. And I will say, I do want to credit your dad, and for those who might not know, he's an Enneagram 3, larger than life. He wakes up that way. He's, rainmaker, Pied Piper. Everybody loves dad, and dad is very fluent in his words, and he's a very good teacher. He expresses things. I remember on long trips, dad would get to the nitty gritty of things and say things that I was like,
Emma would be at the back of the car and be like, Dad, don't say that.
And honestly, the birds and the bees mostly came from dad. He was very, we would be together, but
you and dad were very open about that. But
it was awesome because we had friends that would try to say stuff that was so wrong, and we'd be like, no, my mom and dad told us this. And we were able to have a very honest rebuttal, and it was nice.
I also will add, yes, y'all were very open to a fault, even around my friends, but I never doubted. And I know you've talked about this on podcasts before, like you and dad have had, ups and downs in your marriage, like everyone does, but y'all also, when you were, in a more rough patch, y'all didn't take it behind closed doors and show us that nothing was going on. But I will say, throughout any up and down, high and low of our family, of y'all's marriage, I at least, and Ellie and Emma can give their answer, I never doubted how much y'all loved us and how much y'all loved each other and how much y'all are going to fight for our family and for y'all's marriage. So as a kid, when things are good, when things are bad, I always knew that we were going to be okay because of how y'all feared God and loved us and loved each other. But y'all are very real about life is not perfect all the time.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Ellie and Emma?
Oh yeah. Emma, any commentary on that?
No, I agree. I know you said to focus more on, because you are so honest and you want your viewers to know about you and parenting tips on okay, ways that you could have done a little bit differently, because prefacing seriously, you're the best mom in the world. I have nothing but respect for you and dad, best childhood. I want to be you. I'm literally like a mini you. So I hope that shows you how much I love you.
Aww.
But the one thing I think went awry a little bit when I was growing up, something that I saw was not being able to accept that authority could ever be wrong. I think Judd and Ellie, because they are such just like your typical cookie cutter kids, cookie cutter girls, like everything, never once. They're just like very cookie cutter.
Well, let me just describe. No, let me clarify for everyone who might not
in
know.
the best way.
Judd and Ellie were both considered compliant, easy,
Hey,
never pretty. I mean, did y'all get spankings? I mean, I was.
Yes, we
Yes,
get spankings
ma'am.
from you all the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But
But
then,
like not at school. Like we'd rarely get in trouble at school or
yeah,
with
y'all
the
were
bosses.
very, walk the line. That's what you mean by cookie cutter. Emma's more of a challenger like I was growing up. Oh my goodness, I was not compliant or cookie cutter. So Emma, just to clarify, so go ahead.
yes, thank you for coming back.
And yes, when you say authority, let me preface for everyone that your dad and I had this philosophy. And one thing he and I always said, we are always going to stand together and always present a united front with the girls. We're never going to take sides with them. And if we disagree, we'll take it behind closed doors, because we did not ever want to have a opening where you all could come in and play the other one. We just thought that was important. But as far as authority, and Emma, I know where you're going, and this is great. We always said, if you get in trouble at school, it's going to be 3 times worse when you get home. Don't talk back. Don't question whatever your teachers say. That goes. And at the time that Judd and Ellie were growing up and where they were in school, that was pretty safe.
It was.
Emma, you had a totally different group of people in your senior class. You had some different teachers, and we had some scenarios where that was not the best philosophy. So just speak to that, and then we'll move to the next.
Yeah, I would say the Judd and Ellie, because y'all were so like just perfect. Everyone's favorite, homecoming queen, class favorite, all of that. I think being y'all's sister and y'all's shadow set me up to not be a disappointment to teachers, because I feel like I am very similar to y'all. But I think in like one specific instance that I'm thinking of, I remember coming home and telling you and dad like a specific thing made me uncomfortable, because like at my specific school, like men were dress coding and being super like, just honestly, in my opinion, and even now being an adult at 21, like inappropriate. I think it's inappropriate for men to be telling young girls like in detail that your pants are too tight, or just like certain things that made me uncomfortable. And I told my parents, and especially you, Mom, I think it was you immediately, because like, I guess I had been a challenger before. You and Dad brushed it off and it wouldn't even consider like, okay, this may actually, what my daughter's describing, like if it is true, this is something that needs to be addressed. And I think like in y'all's minds, it's like, wait, no, authority cannot be wrong. Therefore, we're going to dismiss it. So I think one thing I think looking back that you could have done a little bit better was just letting me feel heard when I did, say things, because not feeling listened to or believed, like my feelings were devalidated. I think my dad also apologized to me later, but I just think believing and actually like trying to understand, like, okay, where is my child coming from? Like, this could actually be true, not instantly just saying because they're 50 or 40, like they're right or they're incapable of doing wrong.
And I totally, we have had this talk, and yes, that is something, my response and Dad's too, and you as the challenger went against dress code. And I will say Briarwood's dress code was like the book of Leviticus. I could not find clothes. It was I just wanted uniforms. It was very hard. But every day, just about, you and many of your friends as well challenged. You were on the edge. And so when you would say, Mr. X said this is, I said, if you would dress according to dress code, that wouldn't happen. So be quiet. That's pretty much how Dad and I responded. Well, that's what you get. Yada, yada, yada. So just a little backstory on that. But I do see now that regardless, that those conversations need to be had. Your children, even if they're challenging, even if they're pushing the limits, be heard and have a conversation rather than just saying, just deal with it. I totally see that, Emma. That's true. I'm glad you were brave enough to bring that up. So, and especially in today's culture, I think that you've got to be able, authority today, especially with what we see going on in schools, I think it is extremely important that the parent always be there for the child to hear anything that makes you uncomfortable or nervous or that goes against the grain of your family values. Yes, Emma, I'm very glad you brought that up.
Especially with men. That's the one thing I want to say.
Yes.
Like if
Yep.
child, girl, daughter is saying they feel uncomfortable by an older
Yep,
man.
absolutely. Absolutely. Ellie, so that we'll just circle back to you, things that could have been done better, things that I maybe did wrong.
So I respect you a lot for doing this because it's very hard to ask this
Yeah.
question. But also, I'll be honest, I kind of had to rack my brain a little bit. So what I'm going to say is a bit of a extrapolation. I feel like it wouldn't have just come to mind had I not thought about this a long time. So I just want to preface with that. But most moms, I don't think are like you in the sense of most moms are the nurturing one, right? Just a generalization blanket statement. It's typically the mom that's the loving nurturer and the dad that is kind of more maybe truth in the mom's love. And I am so grateful that you weren't like that. Honestly, I feel like I needed a woman in my life who was the strong, like, I'm going to tell it to you as it is. So with any good thing, I think that there can also be a different side to it, just with every good quality. I felt so much love from you. I never felt like I wasn't loved, but I do feel like with you being more of the truth side and dad overdoing the love side, honestly, almost telling us
He overcompensated.
Right. He very much overcompensated to the point where almost like if y'all had been a bit more balanced in the sense of like, when you did tell me the truth that I very much needed, like, you're not a physical touch person, but maybe just like giving me a hug after. Like, I know that sounds crazy and I didn't even know I really wanted it, but you would tell us the truth in the most loving way. But I think as a daughter, I didn't realize how much I craved even more affection from you. Even though you gave me a lot, sometimes, I would just, I'm not a physical touch person, but I'm just like, I want the truth and then a big hug from mom, And so, again, just prefacing, always felt loved by you, extremely loved. But there's definitely a mother-daughter dynamic where that affection is something that is to be craved. And so, again, I don't think you did anything wrong. It was just an area where a good thing, I think maybe could have had a bit more like balance, if that makes sense.
Yes, it totally does. And just because even in the 5 love languages, I am not physical touch. That's one of my farthest.
Yeah.
But as a mom, that's my job, even when you don't feel like hugging or it's not natural. And a lot of what we are on those 5 love languages is the way we were raised or the way we were parented.
Right. And can I give a story? I think stories are.
Yes, absolutely.
One thing that I needed a lot of direction on, I'm the tomboy. Judd and Emma are super girly. I was the athletic tomboy. And I would come home from basketball practice and I would stay in my basketball clothes for a long time. The long shorts, the jersey, my hair would look crazy. I'd have to make one, and I needed direction in terms of like, go take a shower and like change clothes, And so you were very honest with me about that. And I was so happy. But I remember one time, like, I really got my feelings hurt because the way you said it made me feel like, oh, you're not feminine, even though you weren't mean about it. I don't know. Like for me, I was just like, but tell me I'm still pretty in my basketball clothes, So
the way I said it.
Yes.
Speaking the truth with more gentleness and love.
Yes. But again, I needed that. I needed to get out of those ugly clothes. So anyway, that's what comes to mind. But it was hard to think of, Mom. I couldn't think of anything.
Oh, well, no, then that's so. If you are more like me, prone to speak the truth, find what needs to be corrected, pointing out what needs to be fixed, put on lipstick, do this, don't wear that, do it with love. And
well, even I was a more distant child in the sense of I was probably hard to go up and give a hug to, I wasn't even physical touch either, but like, just make yourself every day as a mom, like kiss them on the head or hug them. And they know that no matter what else happens in the crazy world out there, like both mom and dad love them, to death. And physical touch, I think, is an easy way to do that, regardless of if it's your love language. So
yes. And I will say this, it's because Dad and I've talked about this. As babies, I was the most,
yes, you
sat on the floor and did puppets.
Yes.
All of that. But as you got older, that just
and I made it hard. I was not going.
No, it just generally, I would say Judd and Emma had the same experience. It just, as the older you got, the more I became more of a do this, and not as nurturing. But as babies, I was just the typical nurturing mom.
Yeah. And I think Dad kind of made you that way too, because he was so like, y'all are the best things ever. Y'all are amazing. Like, we didn't need that again from you,
Yeah. Dad and I were a funny dynamic because he overbaked it so much that literally, I think we sort of played off each other. But okay, thank you for that, Ellie. And I do receive that completely. Judd.
Yes, and I'm going to bounce off Ellie because I really did have to rack my brain about things that I thought that you could have done better, because you really were and still are the most incredible mom. But Ellie's a little different than me in a sense that she's a 3 on the Enneagram and I'm a 2. So I feel like I'm extremely sensitive in general, but way more sensitive probably with the people I love the most, who know me the best. So you would sometimes say things that to you, it was just honesty. And to me, it came across as harsh. And so I think I was a little sensitive. So I feel like sometimes you maybe could tailor your communication per child based off their personality and what they need. Like, for instance, Emma, tell me if I'm wrong, you respect a little bit of a spar, and you respect a little bit of like, tell it like it is. But for me, I'm not saying you needed to sugarcoat things, but you could come across as harsh. But on the same note, I was probably overly sensitive. And that's where you and I had to really learn and grow to kind of understand each other a little more. And on the same note, I so respect that you were no nonsense in the sense of you didn't always tell us we just looked absolutely beautiful and perfect. Like you said, the wear your lips, I would come down maybe for school dance looking perfect, hair done, makeup done, beautiful dress, but I wouldn't have my lipstick on, and you'd kind of just like look and be like, wear your lips. And in my mind, I'd be like, like I look great, but you, in a sense, drove us to be better and a little more excellent when we were slacking. And I know in today's world, you have to, especially with daughters, you really have to look at the individual situation. But because I had a great self-esteem, I always felt good about myself because you and Dad never cut us down. I think there is a balance too, to just where when you get in the real world, you have to take care of yourself. You have to make a good first impression for a job or just for life in general. Like, it's just a respect thing. So, in a sense, sometimes you could come across as harsh. You didn't just, enable us to be weak or soft, or, you can just wear, a big t-shirt and like really, frumpy clothes everywhere you go. Like, that's fine. No, you called us to a high standard just in general of, being a woman and taking care of yourself.
Well,
yeah. If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And I did see everything that was, and I should have complimented you. Look beautiful. You look fabulous. Why don't we go get some lipstick or some lip balm? And even with your dad, and I mean, I'm just so direct that sometimes, and I feel that way about myself. Oh my goodness, I need this, I need that. I feel like I don't perceive how others perceive that directness that needs to be tempered based on who I'm speaking with and how they like to receive instruction or correction.
And it's very needed too, like, especially for me in college and like dating in the real world. I'm so grateful when I went to family weddings, with Owen, or, a big, event at Sanford, that when I could call you, I could get very like honest, real, practical advice of how do I need to look? How do I need to act? How do I need to dress? So I feel like it comes in handy so much too. And I'm just also, now I would much rather you be honest than not. Like, there are situations recently where I would call both you and Dad and ask y'all the exact same question. And Dad just is not helpful because he's worried about pleasing other people or making other people happy. And you're more answering my question, practical advice, like telling me what I don't want to hear. And oftentimes I love dad so much. Yours has been more helpful recently just because you're going to be brutally honest and give me a very truthful answer.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we parent the way we want. Dad wants to hear how great he is. And he does want to have credit, but I want to hear everything I need to fix and that I need to get on to do better, be better, look better. And dad does want to grow, but dad does not want to be told how great. He is all about people and the way he wants them to feel great, feel good about themselves, and telling hard truths. He will do that, but he's going to be a lot more thoughtful and deliberate, whereas I'm just more off the cuff.
Right. So, and for us, we already know we're so loved. We already know we're doing good in certain areas. We need to sometimes hear this is where you're not doing well.
Yeah. Well, and I do know that we are winding down, but I do want to ask each of you, is there anything y'all want to that you really feel like you want to say to those listening or watching, mothers? What would be your best advice? Because today people are craving direction. How do I need to parent to have the best, most well-adjusted child? Can y'all speak to mothers?
I have one thing I would say. I can only speak to what I experienced growing up, and it was amazing by the grace of God. But I really think every single Mother's Day letter I wrote you, tell me if I'm wrong, but did I not say, you're such a cool mom, all my friends love you? Did I not say that?
Yeah, you did.
Yes. And the reason I said that is not because you're beautiful, not because you're fun, but it was because you made an effort to be around us and our friends. Mm-hmm. And so speaking to moms, to be cool and to want to be around, and for your kids and their friends to want to be around you, I did cool in quotations. Be creative with how you do that. It doesn't have to be your presence. It can be bringing them together with a meal, or taking them to go get their nails done, or finding very just kind of like sneaky ways to be around without being overbearing, but just being able to be someone that your daughters and their friends are comfortable around. Mm-hmm. Is something that I just think is so invaluable, because I wanted my friends to come over to our house. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to go to their house. I wanted them to come to our house because they loved you, Mom. And it was because, again, like there was always a meal, you always had a snack, and that was just your way of bringing people together. But you lingered and you stayed and you asked questions about their life. And then in turn, they felt loved by you. And I felt loved because you loved my friends. And I don't know if that makes sense, but I just think that when it comes to raising kids that are going to hopefully do well in the real world, and once they graduate from your house, like want to still be around you and bring their friends and husband and boyfriend around you, like I think that starts young. And instead of banishing them to the basement with a movie and popcorn, like just being around. And yeah, you would take us to the park together. And I just think back to a lot of things, even if you just watched us play in the yard and you sat out there. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. And Dad and I had the philosophy of, and we were part of a very widespread curriculum movement where we raised y'all growing kids God's way, preparation for parenting, and the authority of the adults and the example of the adults and older people was where we were taught to expose our kids. Because if you just always push kids in a room, there's just a lot of foolishness, a lot of immaturity, because they've got to see what mature looks like, what truth looks like, what people who have a lot more wisdom. So we tried to have older people. We tried to be there, and whether, we weren't always down there, but we wanted y'all's free time to be spent more with access to and interaction with older people rather than just shoving everybody, in a room with popcorn and movie.
And there's going to be a phase for every daughter where they think their mom's not cool. I just think that's a reality, but deep down, they really do know, like, hey, I want to be around my mom. I'm just putting on a front. So yeah,
don't be offended because every mom gets that pushback.
Right. Like you were interested in our friends, and then in turn they were interested in you. And so I just think that's amazing.
And Ellie, that was a phenomenal point. And do you remember when all like our closest girlfriends would come over in our living room and sit with Mom and Dad and just like ask all the dating questions, ask all of the deep questions, and they would just sit at your feet, literally just having the best time with Judd and Ellie's parents. And to us, that was so special because y'all would oftentimes, we'd go down in the basement later, but y'all would oftentimes let everyone gather upstairs around the table around y'all and would really pour so much life and genuine care into things that were important to us at the time. In the grand scheme of things, weren't big life issues. And on the same note, I'm just thinking of so many people in my life that y'all would not even know, but because they were important to me and because they're important to Ellie and Emma, you would just have them over to dinner. You wouldn't know this new small group leader we had, but because we loved them, y'all would invite them over for a meal and get to know them. And then they would fall in love with, you and dad. So that was important too. Y'all cared and made an effort to get to know who was important to us.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to say for moms listening, I am a Martha, so cooking food for 30 to 50 was nothing to me, but I may not have been the most nurturing, but I would converse and I would be in the kitchen. And a lot of times when your friends would be there, I might be busy, but coming and your dad might be talking. But moms who may not feel comfortable doing that, bring in pizza and you sit and like one of my best friends, Deborah, we call her couch therapy. She's not going to cook. She'll order pizza, but she's going to sit there and get in your face and listen and cry.
And hug you and rub your back.
Yes. And every mom, see where you shine, where you can really dig in and do that well. And then everything else, bring in your husband with his gift, your friends, your kids, other parent friends. Everybody has a way that they can do things that make it beneficial for the children. So Emma, anything on that note?
I think final thoughts, just because I know we have to wrap up, but I think the one thing I would just tell other moms to be aware of is just an overemphasis in any way on beauty, weight, any diet talk. I think one of the most detrimental things I think that has affected the way that I still view food and stuff unintentionally, because I admire you, I watch you, but I think any emphasis on just diet talk a lot, or how to lose weight, how to eat as little as possible, not even if it's from, or, oh, your jeans are too tight, not even if it's from a place of struggling with food. I think for daughters, especially when I entered college, watching certain habits, I think the biggest thing I could tell moms is just do not, yes, help your kids, look presentable. But I think the way that food has affected a lot of my college, I think just staying away and being very sensitive to the fact of, if it's unhealthy, of course, tell your daughter. But I think just any diet talk needs to be eliminated, and just can be really detrimental just in our culture too, with always trying to be thin.
And I don't remember mom ever talking about diets. You're just saying that in general. Yeah.
Well, no, I think that was my experience growing up, because not intentionally, but mom, you just are so beautiful and prioritize health and wellness, and you are naturally thin. But I think for me, in my experience in the childhood, you did sometimes, I did hear weight talk and stuff. And I think that did affect the way that I,
Yeah. And I do think the generation I grew up in, mothers, grandmothers were just so direct, and, now you don't need another dessert. You don't need this, that. But in today's culture, there are issues that I think spring from that I think social media feeds. So I think that's a very, very good point.
Mom, can I say one more thing? Because I didn't say what I would tell moms. This is, I think, the single most important thing that shaped who I am in a childhood. And after nannying a lot and babysitting a lot, when I observe other moms, I'm so grateful that you did this, because a lot of the moms I know also do this to their kids. But I think there was so much power in the life that you, the words of life that you spoke over all of us growing up. When we would get out of the car on the way to school, you would say every single day, y'all are leaders, y'all are not followers, y'all are going to be kind to everyone, especially those, who get made fun of.
Well, we prayed, Dad and I, I don't know if Dad had that specific prayer. And Emma, do you remember this? Before y'all got out, I said, okay, dear Lord, thank you for these girls. Help them have a wonderful day. Help them to be leaders, not followers, and to love everyone, especially the disadvantaged.
Yes.
So I prayed that every day. And I will say, all three of you, and one thing that I do think is the most important thing that Dad and I both did. I think I emphasize this more as an 8. I look at the disadvantaged and the people maybe who are serving you at McDonald's, or the delivery, the mail delivery people. All 3 of you would run, take Cokes and cookies or treats to our wonderful trash collectors, and y'all loved that. And
not that they're disadvantaged. That's
No.
it's like,
oh, well, what word is right?
that's probably not, that's not the
know
best.
what word
You
is right.
would
'cause
say
we didn't-
people, you would say people that are just like less fortunate, like
less fortunate.
we'd
Yes.
be ignorant to say that we didn't grow up very fortunate, you know. And so you weren't ever saying it's bad to be a delivery driver. Man.
No.
You highlighted them in their work ethic and said, yeah, they're less fortunate, but they're working really hard, a lot harder than you. Go give them a Coke, you know.
Yes.
I always wanted you all to be nicer to those people than the people in our world who needed to be serving rather than being told, you know. So I will say all 3 of you are so kind to everyone. You treat everyone through the same lens, and that is a testament, I hope, to maybe what Dad and I hoped to put into you. But anything else, girls, y'all, this is, I mean, I feel like we have so much more we could say, especially things that I did differently. If y'all have any, I will ask if y'all have any resources. Y'all are all readers and deep thinkers. If you have any resources or anything you want to share, or your contact information, that will be in the show notes. And any questions anyone might have, send them my way. I'll get them to the girls. And I'm just so grateful to you all. Anything else before we sign off? I know everybody has a busy day.
Thank you, Mom. And as harsh as you were, the words of life you spoke to us really did, like, whatever you speak to kids, I firmly believe that is what they become. Nothing shapes them more than what they believe about themselves and about what they're, in my mind, what other people speak into their potential. And so I think we became a lot of what you spoke and told us we were and told us we could be. So as harsh as you were, I think your words of life and your love and truth did help us become who we are today.
We're super grateful for you, Mom.
Yeah.
You're the best mom in the world. And I want to be a mini version of you.
Me too.
Oh, y'all are so precious. I love y'all, and thank y'all for joining me. And we'll do this with Dad in a few weeks, because that'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
His dad's awesome. Awesome. Okay, girls, love y'all. Y'all get on with your Saturday, and I will talk to y'all soon.
Love you.
Love y'all.
Love y'all. Bye.
Bye.